Hello and welcome, drivers, to the next module in the NHTSA School Bus Driver in-Service Safety Series, or basically a refresher training. Once again, I am, your host, MJ Severance. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to watch this. Let's just get straight into it. The module goal, or the module goals, review the emergency evacuation procedures for regular riders, special needs riders, infants and toddlers in safety seats, or basically preschool. Address how to provide pre-trip emergency instruction to non-regular riders. Now, when do you evacuate a school bus? That is a good question. Fire potential. I know many people can remember the old yellow bus incident that happened in the fall or October, of 2018, when the old yellow bus caught on fire. The engine did, and it turned out that one of the pistons and cylinders had melted. Whenever there's smoke basically pouring out of somewhere, you want to evacuate the bus, or even if there's a potential for it. Hazmat or biohazardous incident. So that's one particularly, such as bloodborne pathogens. Even something such as radioactive waste, if you want to get into an extreme example. A security situation, so basically weapons. And this can also be extended to violent people on the bus. Like weapons such as guns, knives. But the most common one would probably be a bomb that someone has planted before. And also unsafe position of the bus due to weather, mechanical failure, road conditions, or motor vehicle collision. That's a very important one. Also, if you're stuck up on a railroad track. So that is when you evacuate a school bus. Where would riders be the safest, on or off the bus? That is your decision. The decision is based on your evaluations. In some situations, it may be an easy choice, like, for example, a fire. In other situations, you may need to think through your options, such as weather or, a hazmat situation, or even a unsafe position, such as weather, mechanical failure, road conditions, or motor vehicle collision. Obviously, if it's a mechanical failure or a motor vehicle collision, you obviously want to get the students off and contact LCS. But if it's weather or road conditions, that's kind of your judgment. Okay. Module contents is basically how to make the decision to evacuate, how to evacuate safely, and how to plan for evacuation with all sorts of different riders, regular riders, special needs riders, and preschool riders. Making the decision to evacuate. Okay, this next series of slides is very important. Establish communication with the school. Do not make the decision by yourself if time allows. The school can notify emergency personnel. Obviously, if it's really critical, you obviously want to contact emergency services first before you contact the school. Or even better, have someone contact the school and someone contact emergency personnel in the modern day of cell phones and smartphones. And pretty much everyone has a smartphone unless you're in preschool or kindergarten, and even then there's probably a teacher on board that has one, so you can have them help you with that. Ask 2 questions. Can you move the bus to a safer location instead of evacuating the riders? So that would be in such an instance like an unsafe position due to weather or road conditions. So if there's like a parking lot somewhere nearby, or you're right close to a parking lot, or a rest area on the highway, obviously you want to do that rather than evacuating on the spot. If you can't move the bus to a safer place, is there a safe place for riders to assemble? This can be a critical point in your decision making, because obviously we have 2 rear engine buses, and if one of them it has fire coming back from the engine bay, then you obviously can't evacuate to the back like you're supposed to do. So just make sure you know a good place for the students or the riders to assemble, and make sure that you are not putting them in harm's way. Preferable evacuation exits. Obviously, front door is priority. That should be pretty self-explanatory. 2 is the front or rear side door. Well, I guess the front side door is, so the front door, the main entry door, the front and or rear side door. So I know that on the yellow bus, the Thomas HDX, there's one in the mid section, pretty much in the middle on the driver's side. Window, so the side windows with the red handles, or the windshield or the back window. That can be very important. Say the bus gets in a rollover, obviously that is probably worst case scenario, and it ends up on its top. Then you want to go through the side windows, or the windshields, or the back window. Obviously, if you need to evacuate as quickly as possible, you're probably going to use the windows, but obviously the windows are a huge jump from the window to the ground, so just save that for a rollover, I guess. And also a roof hatch, and that would also be saved for a rollover, but the bus is on its side, because obviously you don't want students risking getting up on top of the bus and then maybe tripping and falling off the bus, or even if they are prepared to jump off, you don't want them getting a broken ankle. Okay. General emergency evacuation procedures. Number 1, pick a safe assembly point. This is your number one priority whenever you choose to evacuate the bus. So obviously you want to choose an assembly point that will be safe for both other motorists, but mainly the students, as that's most important. And also make sure that when you pick the safe assembly point for your students, make sure that is not conflicting with other motorists. Notify the school that you're evacuating, and also notify emergency services. Call your student helper for assistance. This is something new, which I think we'll get to in another slide, in an upcoming slide. But basically, your student helper is someone you designate before the trip, or it could even be another staff member to assist riders and yourself on the evacuation and assembly points. Announce evacuation and assembly point. You want to make this loud and clear, and do it as quickly as possible, but not too quick that it's unclear. Give instructions to the riders. Monitor progress of evacuation, which means probably standing at the front of the bus in between the front door, and the aisle and the driver's seat, making sure everyone is getting off the bus safely. Prepare the bus for the emergency. So if there's a fire, you obviously want to find a fire extinguisher, which are in different locations on each bus. Or if there's in worst case scenario, there's a bomb planted there on every or planted there by somebody else. You want to basically, obviously, if you're doing window evacuations, you're probably not going to be able to do this, but try and close the front door or any doors that will that can be used to keep in, I guess, the explosion or whatever. Also, for number 7, what are the last things you do before leaving the bus? What do you grab? Do you need to grab anything? Or do you need to turn the bus off? In some cases that might be a yes, and some that might be a no. Say if there's a fire in the engine, you probably are gonna, it depends. You're probably gonna want to turn the bus off. That's probably gonna be your first instinct. Obviously, if you don't know how bad the fire is, you might want to just leave it on as to risk the engine not exploding, I guess. And finally, release riders per district, or I guess school policy procedures and policies. Obviously, parents will most likely be there within a heartbeat once they find out that their kid is on the side of the road and evacuating a school bus. But also, there should be school vans on the way to pick people up, or another bus. And if there is not another bus, then there will most likely be school vans. So now we're going to go over the different types of evacuations. Back or side door evacuations. Again, this is like the rear door on the Ashland Greenwood bus, or the side door on the yellow bus, the Thomas HDX. Know how to hold open devices work. Also, both the student assistant or helper and the driver need to know how to do this. Student helper would exit first. Student helper would help the riders out of the bus. Also, if there's a mat on board, which I think we're working on, place a mat on the ground for them to, cushion their fall, or if they, fall on their way down, something for them to hit rather than asphalt. Correct exit position. Sit down on the floor first and then ease out. So obviously you want to tell them to sit down have your student helper tell them to sit down on the floor and then ease out. Riders exit by rows from back to front. Obviously, depending on where the situation is at, so if it's at the front, you probably are going to want to evacuate front to back. Or if the incident is in the middle, that's going to be a little more tricky. If you have a back exit door, then you're probably that's gonna be your best bet. So like middle to back and middle to front, if you have that back exit door, or the exit door rear, most rear to the or on the rear half of the bus, excuse me. But just make sure that you know how the riders are gonna evacuate by rows. Let's see, next is side windows or roof hatch evacuations. Know how to open these exits. Push vent open and release safety lock, or push release handle and open cover. This is obviously, these are obviously, the first one is obviously for roof hatch, and the second one is the side window. Student helper will exit first in all these evacuations. And then the student helper would help riders out of the bus. Planning for an emergency evacuation with regular riders. This we kind of go over at the on the beginning of the year, or at the beginning of the year drills. But just it's not a bad thing to remind everybody. Think through an emergency evacuation and how it should unfold. Have emergency numbers handy. Identify student helpers before an emergency happens, and teach them how to help you. So obviously, it would be nice to have numbers of the school or the office or someone at the school that has authority over this as emergency numbers, and also identify the student helpers before an emergency happens. So whether that's a staff member or a student, designate them before you take off on the trip and just tell them, hey, this is what I need you to do. Can you do it? Which they should be able to. Emergency plan for riders with special needs. Now these last slides, we do not have the equipment available at LCS to do this. Meaning we don't have we don't have the capabilities at LCS to transport special needs riders, but just keep this in mind. Which riders can evacuate themselves, which riders can be removed without a wheelchair or a specialized seat or a CCS or CSS, which riders must not be removed from wheelchair, specialized seat, or CSS, or needs specialized equipment to remove them with. And which riders and personnel could help you with that. Obviously, yeah. This is obviously really important. Yeah, sorry. Yes. My bad. Okay. Things to remember: know where to find and how to use a belt cutter and a fire blanket. A belt cutter should be standard on all the buses. Even though there's really no seat belts. Practice general lifting guidelines and special moving techniques. So the one person lift, two person lift, and so on, and then the blanket drag, which is where you may have someone on the floor of the school bus, drag them out and drag them through the aisle of the bus until you get to the door or window or what have you, to lift them out safely. Evacuations of preschool riders and child safety seats. Again, this we do not have the technology for this at LCS, but it's also very important to know. Have a written seating plan and evacuation plan. That also should go with the special needs riders. Plan should cover preschool age children and other passengers. Child safety restraint systems should not be placed in school bus seats adjacent to emergency exits. Provide written plans to drivers and any attendants, basically staff members. Preschool evacuation guidelines: do not remove child from the seat. Remove child from bus in seat. That pretty much makes no sense. Simply cut seat belt and take child and seat off bus together. Okay? So basically, do not remove the child from the seat. This is basically what I'm trying to say. Do not remove the child from the seat, but remove the child from the bus in the seat. So obviously you want to take the seat with you, or keep the child in the seat. remove riders from bus and place them in a safe location, obviously. I think that's it for this module. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to watch this and refresh yourself, I guess. Thank you for your dedication to our safety, and safety of all students and athletes. We believe in your ability to do a great job and appreciate your hard work to maintain this level of excellence. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next module.